What does a long GCA question look like? Well, let's try one out. I want you to imagine a situation where you've been working on a big analysis for a number of weeks. You've just completed the final draft of your slide deck, and you sent those outlines and work and findings to your director. Your director emails you back a list of changes that you anticipate will take about 3 hours. It's 4 p.m., and the meeting to discuss your final analysis with the broader audience is the next morning at 8 a.m. How would you proceed? So, I'm going to proceed wearing the hat of a technical recruiter role. Now, you'll see in this answer that while this is an important data point, and I always want you to wear the hat of the role, it's going to be a little less important in this answer. And lastly, I just want to note, let's imagine our interviewer, Sue, is pretty non-responsive overall. So the first step is really clarification part one. So you're absolutely, with these long questions, this is about a 5 sentence question. You're going to want to make sure that your interviewer restates it and probably restates it a couple of times. So have that pen and paper ready to write it down and then dive in and start with your clarifying questions. And as always, we're going to follow the CFAS method. So, the first question I would have in regards to this analysis is this being utilized as a driver or a sum up? Is this coming before a project or initiative or after a project or initiative? Okay, let me ask just a few more questions. Is the director my manager or my skip manager in this case? And I'd also want to know if I have an established relationship with this director or not. I'd also want to know, is the broader audience, are they internal or external? And will I be presenting this data? Will the director be presenting this data? Or is it going to be a mix of both of us? Sue, can you clarify any of these questions for me? Okay, Sue, in order to solve for this answer, we just need to focus in on just a few items. I really want to focus in on prioritization. That's going to be key. In regards and correlated with prioritization, we really want to look at dependencies. We're going to have to do a little bit of a dive into the data and analysis. Of course, the whole time we're going to be looking at the timeline and then just overall communication. I think we should definitely start by focusing in on prioritization, but is there another area you'd like to focus in on? Okay, let's dive in with some assumptions. Let's assume that this analysis is more sum up than at the initial starting point of a program or project. Let's say it's in regards to, let's say, time for hire for all software engineers in North America. The director is actually my direct boss, and the audience is internal, but it's going to include critical stakeholders because this is a critical item, time to hire. So we'll have an audience of peers all the way up to the VP level. So if we're really focusing in on prioritization, the first step is I want to respond immediately to my director via chat and let them know, hey, I am going to take the next 15 to 30 minutes. I'm going to go through all your comments and I will follow up to just make sure that there's no ambiguities, no lack of clarity, but I definitely want to do this via chat so that she sees it right away. Then I would instantly prioritize the questions that I have, if any, and really organize them in a way where we're focusing in on the most critical first. So just via chat, I might send 2 or 3 questions via chat and let her know that I'm also going to send a follow-up with maybe more questions, but these are the most critical pressing questions that I would want answered today. Now, the second step after prioritizing these questions is to prioritize dependencies while I'm waiting to hear back from my director. So I would really look into the data and uncover if there were any critical stakeholders that I may need to involve in this process for changes. So I may need to connect with my product lead, for example, who may be on the recruiting side for engineering. I might need to bring in Eng leadership as well. They might be an important stakeholder. I may need to connect with a data analyst or a researcher to just help me along the way. Now, assuming that we're at 4:30 at this point, I would give myself about a half an hour to do all these reach outs. So now we're at the 1 hour mark from reaching back out to the director and reaching out to these critical stakeholders in regards to prioritizing this work. So I think, Sue, the best next step is for us to dive a little bit deeper into that actual work and what that prioritization looks like. But we could also talk a little bit more about those communication items with the director or the critical stakeholders. What do you prefer? Okay, well, let's dive in. I haven't really started my clock yet. So, really, we're at 5 p.m. and I'm still looking at these 3 hours of work. Now, I'm going to start with reprioritizing based on any additional feedback from the director. I'll also reprioritize with any critical stakeholders or who are still around and willing and want to support any efforts or can support any efforts. And then I'm going to timeline out all these tasks by priority. So I'm going to start with the larger vision and goal of the analysis because I want to connect it back to the goals, especially when focusing with a broader audience. Now, second, I really want to focus in on that data, something that I mentioned initially, and really make sure that the time to hire data is clear and concise. Third, I'll kind of correlate and tie this to benefits and the meaning behind the data, especially with some higher level stakeholders, and then uncover if there are any areas for improvements and how to make these improvements moving forward. Now, the last thing to prioritize is just the admin piece. I want to make sure that there's no spelling errors. I want to make sure that the deck is super clean from a visual standpoint. So that's something I should have done before I got it to the director, but I will do that last check as well. So once I've gone through all these steps, I think the next best step is communicating with the director and really closing out our solution. Is this a good path? I mean, I'm happy to dive a little bit more into the criticality of any of that data and analysis and how I would prioritize these items. Okay, let's assume that with my initial prioritization, that initial communication, and a short break for dinner, that actually from 4 o'clock, it didn't take 3 hours, it took 5 hours. I just want to build in a little bit of a buffer for myself. So that I finalized the presentation by 9 p.m. I would take the following actions. I would email the director with the finalized presentation confirming every single area of all the requested follow-ups, including from a first and or second communication. Secondly, I would note, hey, I'm shutting down for the evening, but I'll be back online / in the office by 6 a.m. tomorrow to handle any specific follow-ups or any last minute edits or changes that we need to make. Third, I would really let them know that since they are my direct lead, that in our next one-on-one, I would really like to get some guidance and advice on opportunities for improvement in regards to how to just better organize my time. And is there a better system that we can create together when we get into these big analysis, when we do these bigger presentations, to just make sure that I'm doing everything right? The real goal would be expectation alignment and make sure that I'm not putting my lead in a similar situation in the future. And I really want to be empathetic that this presentation was shared with her pretty late. So I'm ideally going to go and listen, question, and look for improvements. Sue, I believe this is a good stopping point, but I can expand on any area of prioritization to data and analysis to any communication / feedback. And that's it. We did the CFAS method. We went through 3 solutions. Again, this is a higher level question, so it's a little tricky to get into the weeds of something role specific. But the time to hire piece, the intent there was just to give a little bit of a visual behind this answer. I hope this helps. Thanks.